Hello everybody and welcome to part 11 of the Blender 2.80 Absolute Beginners course. So in this part we'll be finally getting to the mysterious edit mode, which was already mentioned a couple of times before. So let's just jump into it, shall we? The edit mode, as I mentioned in one of the videos before, can be accessed from this drop-down menu here. And as I also mentioned, some of the viewports in Blender have different working modes, but as for now, we will just focus on those two, which is object mode, we already know that, and the edit mode. So in edit mode, you can see the cube becomes orange, and that means everything is selected right now. So if I left click somewhere in the background, it gets back to its more or less original form, except you see there are some outlines or uh, edges are becoming darker. So if I go back to the object mode, which by the way I did by pressing the tab key, and this will probably become the key you're gonna use most often while working in Blender. So tab key changes the edit mode and object mode, and as you can see, the toolbar here also changes a lot when I press the key. Not only this one, but as well the one we have here, and something changes here as well. So I will get into all of that in a second. So the edit mode, when you zoom in a little bit, you can see we have those corners of the object we can select by left clicking them. And I will go to the X-ray mode. We already called it like this, so it's more visible. So when I press Shift key, you can see I can select different elements of the object I'm editing, which the name stands for. So now when I press G key, you can see this way we can deform the object and change its original form. So you may remember when I said the cubed, which is why it's our beloved cube, will probably be the object you're gonna use the most in Blender, and that's because it really, to create any other 3D geometry, you don't actually need anything else than just a cube or maybe a sphere. You might think, well, how is it possible if we only have a limited number of edges and corners of the object and faces? Well, that's going to be shown in the next videos. Um, actually, in the next video. But as for now, let's just get comfortable with what we can do in the edit mode. So you can see, as for now, I'm only editing the corners of the object, and actually right now you don't even know what was the original corner of the cube. We deformed it so much, and those corners we call vertices. I never know how to pronounce it correctly, so I'm sorry for that. But you can see, you can also you can see them highlighted here. When I click this item, you can see the edges got a bit darker, and now when I left click on them, I can actually move the entire edges. I could also do this by selecting two of the vertices, and now I also have the edge selected. But sometimes you want to save yourself those few more clicks and just select the edges. When I choose this item, you can see now I can left click and select the entire faces. And again, if I go to the vertices here, you can see when I had the face selected, when I switch, now I have 4 of them selected as well. So if I left click and holding my shift key when I do the selection, I can have basically the same thing. So depending on what you actually need and want to achieve, switching between these options will be a key to success. So again, there are some cases where you just left click all of the corners or vertices of the face to select it. Sometimes you prefer to do it maybe like this. The other time it's going to be edge. So again, if I select 4 edges, in the end the face will be my entire selection. So uh, with vertices, with a single vertex selected, I can just move it around. If I press R or S keys, nothing actually changes. But let's say when I go to face selection mode, and I press S, now you can see we have much bigger influence on the geometry. When I press R, it's the same. So you can see that again, those 3 main transformation tools, move, rotate, and scale, are the essence and are the fundament of what we are doing in Blender. So I hope now you see why we did why we focused on them so much in the past 10 videos, because I wanted you to really get used to them, get used to how they work. As you can see, now I'm just using shortcuts like G. When I go to the face mode, I press R to select. I'm not already mentioning that, so I hope you know what I'm doing. I press S for scaling, G for grabbing. But again, you can activate them here if you want to, and you will have the gizmo working exactly the same way as it does in the object mode. When I press tab, I go to object mode, and you can see it still works like this. So when I press tab again, we are back to the object mode, to the edit mode, I'm sorry. So now let's see what we can do with other objects. I will delete the cube and I will add a UV sphere. So when I scale it up a little bit and go to the edit mode, you can see we have those multiple faces, and the object seems much more complex than just the cube. But again, the same tools apply here. And by the way, a shortcut for this video will be just 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. So you can see when I press 1, I'm in the vertex selection mode. When I press 2, I have the edges selected. We can also go to wireframe for better preview. And when I press 3, I have a face selection mode. So when I have a face selection mode, maybe this works better for us. You can see each face has this little dot in the middle when I'm in this X-ray or wireframe modes, and that tells us where the center of a face is. So in the solid mode, without any transparency on the object, I'm just holding my shift key and selecting the faces. And when I activate the X-ray mode, it's actually better. You see, I want to select this face in front of me, but when I click somewhere within its corners, I'm selecting the faces behind it. But when I click around this point here, this is the way I can select it faster. Or at all, probably. Honestly, I don't remember how it works in a new Blender, but you get the idea and you will figure it out yourself in the end. So yeah, let's say we want to deform this sphere. So when I go to the vertex mode and press G, you see we can do something like this, but then we will have those big stretched faces here. So what if we could do it much more smoothly, like this? I will just select this one vertex here, and I will activate the tool we have here. So I will click enable, and you see this little graph here becomes brighter, meaning it's now active. And when I press G key, you can see we are moving stuff a little bit differently. And you also see this circle here. So now when I use my scroll, when I use the scroll on my mouse button, I can actually decrease or increase or decrease the radius of this transformation. This is where rotating a vertex actually works. So now when I press R key, you can see what's happening with the geometry of the sphere. When I press S, it's the same. So we can do stuff which is very, very intriguing. And the tool we are using is called proportional editing. So again, let's select something like this. Let's select here. Let's just play around a little bit so you can see the end result. Now when we exit the edit mode and go back to the object, our model doesn't look like a sphere anymore. You might wonder if we can make it smoother without those edges and faces visible. And to do that, you just go to the object menu here and select shade smooth. So now you can see we have those, the faces are still there. If we go to the edit mode, we can see they are visible, but when we leave the object mode, they disappear. We can also access this this option, shade smooth, shade flat, from here. So when I click flat shading, now it becomes everything like the low level geometry, the faces, edges, and vertices become visible again. So right click and smooth shading. So you may wonder, like, why didn't you show me that before? I had those amazing trees in the previous part, but they look they look like very flat, right? Like the name says. Why didn't we make them smooth? Well, let me show you an example. When we add a cylinder or even a cube, and now when I activate the smooth shading, does it look like a cube to you? It doesn't to me, to be honest. Same happens when I activate the smooth shading for the cylinder. So you can see those objects look a bit strange. Let's see how it behaves on the other geometry. Where's the Suzanne? Yeah, let's add them. And when I activate it on a Suzanne, well, it doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look great either. And the reason for that is, well, you still have a lot to learn, and I will explain how those features work in the next few more videos, because we need to get a little bit deeper into the object mode to understand how those two shading modes work. So you can clearly see here the Suzanne. Still, it's very edgy here on the corners, but it still looks better than the cube, which has this straight shading happening here, and the cylinder with this strange thing happening when I rotate the camera, right? You can see those darker boundaries. So this has to do with the object geometry, and we will get into that in a couple more videos when I be telling you how to do the 3D meshes properly, so they actually look more like a Suzanne and they don't have those shading bugs in here. So stay tuned and just keep watching the next few parts. So to end this video, I will show you one more thing which is very important in edit mode. I will move the cube a little bit to the side, and you might remember when I was talking about 3D cursor, we have those object origin points. So when I rotate my mouse, when I press the rotate tool, it the whole transformation is happening around this central point. And when you snap, let's say, a small cube to the big one, so we will just rehearse some of the knowledge. I will left click here. Sorry, I need to select my 3D cursor first. I will left click here. Now, come on, like what you're doing. My 3D cursor is here, my object is here, and I want to snap it to the cursor. So I right click, select snap, and selection to cursor. And you can see the object. This is what Blender understand as an object when you use a snap tools, or maybe a selection, yeah. So Blender will always move this object according to its origin point to the 3D cursor. So again, snap, selection to cursor. What if you want to have this point aligned to this face? And we can do this in edit mode. The easiest way to do this is when you just access the edit mode, and well, you just, when you grab a cube in edit mode, you can see you can even move it outside the origin point. So now when we go back to the object mode and I press R, you can see the whole transformation is still taking place around this point. So it will always be the object's origin point. The thing is, we can move the actual object in edit mode outside it. So we can even place it that far. And when we press R key, it's still gonna work like this. This is something you shouldn't do, because when you have multiple objects in the scenes and they are all messed up this way, you'll have a really hard time working with stuff. So let's say you want to rotate this cube, but then something like this is happening and you're getting lost. So well, when something like this happens, the way to fix it is very simple. You can either go back to edit mode and just move it, but it's way too slow and time consuming. To do this quickly, you can just go to object and set origin. And now you have multiple options here. So when you do origin to geometry, the point goes back to an average position of the entire geometry. So let's say I will select this face, move it like this, and now we would like this point to be centered. So I can rotate the object more precisely, I just go here, set origin to geometry, and it will always be somewhere in the middle of the object. So let's say one more thing, I will just select this edge, place it here, and now when I press set origin to geometry, it goes somewhere here. But yeah, like, how do you do this on the edge of the object, right? So this is, you should already, if you paid attention, now you should already know how to do this. I can left click on the face, can right click. Yeah, by the way, when you right click, you can see again in edit mode you have some different tools here available, but the snap tool is still here. So I can now move the cursor to selection, and when I go to the object tool here and set origin, you might have noticed we have origin to 3D cursor. So now this point we had here a second ago is now at the 3D cursor. So if I put the cursor here again, now oh, come on. Now I have this mesh selected, right? And now I click snap selection to cursor. You can see it moved here. So let me just go to the top view. We can just rotate the object, and it's aligned almost perfectly. Almost, because you can see I messed up this cube a little bit. So if I delete it, and let's do it one more time. So I will just to make it clear, I will just put the 3D cursor to the world origin. So when I add a new cube, it's created here. Now in the side view I can see it better. So when I select the face, I can snap 3D cursor to the selection, so you can see the origin is here, the cursor is here. I go to set origin to 3D cursor, the point moved here. Now I put the cursor on this face. I have this object selected, as you can see. And now I do snap selection to cursor, and now it's perfectly aligned. So a lot of knowledge, a lot of new stuff in this video. I would suggest, just again, you might know my tip already, play around, rehearse what we've just learned, go to the edit mode, play a little bit with the very basic objects, try to deform them, try to create some basic shapes you already know, like, I don't know, something like this maybe. You can see if you combine it with what we did in the previous video, where we just use those very primitive meshes to create stuff around, you can already start building your things. So let's say I just duplicate it, rotate by 100 degrees, and we have something like this. I don't know, this could be a part of building. Now we can just duplicate it, pressing Shift Y, Shift R to repeat the operation, and yeah, you can already see we have something. So again, just play around. I think learning the edit mode and the way you can operate on those elemental parts of the geometry, like vertices, edges, and faces. This is the very, very, very essential knowledge of Blender, and honestly, this will be if you're gonna do the 3D modeling, this, like those three tools here, move, rotate, scale, and those three, let's call them tools here, will be the most essential thing, the most important thing. That these are the things that everything circles around in Blender. So have fun with it, practice a little bit, and we see in the next video. Bye.